very tough going.
You see,
but that family took, they took absolute precautions. They didn't do, I mean, it was the masks, the gloves, the disinfectant, the hot soapy water over all surfaces, and keeping the young man isolated. And it hasn't spread to any other member of the family.
But Mairead, you've grown up children, as do you, Helen, if I remember correctly. I, as a father of 2 young children, am utterly petrified when they go back to school in September, and the possibility that they get swine flu, particularly in the case of one who suffers from asthma. So as a parent of a young child, I get the sense that, you know, schools aren't really taking this that seriously in terms of what their nuclear option is if there is an outbreak of swine flu in a class or in a school. My mind is, shut it down, isolate it.
Well, I think there again, we have to keep this in context. And in fairness, I think the HSE, we say a lot of bad things about the HSE, I think they've handled this fairly well. But you're right, and I mean, I know if I had younger kids that were going back to school, I'd be saying, what is the school going to do about this? Are they alert? And I think, in fact, the schools are pretty good like that. We know, and you will always experience it, I remember it myself, that kids go back and inevitably, you know, one of them's going to come down with something because that's the way things are. So I think parents need to be that little bit more vigilant. But if we start to panic about it, and I think this is where we have been a little bit a victim here in this country of some of the red tops in the UK who went absolutely ballistic about the whole thing, ridiculously so. And I think we have handled it better so far in this country. A lot of the media stuff really needs to be sensitive to, you know, people like you, you know, you don't need to be panicked. You need to know that your kids are going to be okay. I was asking, because I knew this topic was coming up, I was asking one of our programs officers who is connected with the work that we do in Uganda, Tanzania and Kenya, because obviously there aren't the sophisticated systems.
And death is more or less the norm amongst young children.
Yeah, but they have said that in the areas that they're in, yes, there are reported cases of swine flu. Fortunately, there have been no fatalities as yet. But even there, you know, we're gearing up. You can imagine now that there's a lot of compromised children there. And I think that's what we have to be aware of here. For your child with asthma, you're going to be very anxious about that. And I think you're going to yourself keep a very watchful eye. But I think you should also say to the school, and perhaps they already know, you know, about the asthma, and make them aware that there is an issue here.
Paul, you're chomping at the bit to get in there. I'm just curious to know, someone who works in the media as well, do you fear that a sense of indifference may creep in if the likes of you and I and other people in the media continue to ram this down people's necks?
Yeah.
They're just saying, enough already.
We are definitely, to some extent, muddying the waters. I think perhaps it's more along the case of the red tops. We try to deal with this very issue. Swine flu, is it something we really need to worry about in the show? And a doctor, a very eminent, established character, came up and told us that the reason why it's so exotic and the reason why it's so interesting is because it's a combination of bird and pig, and this is something which is quite rare. It's a rare mutation of the disease. But at the same time, he said that it's only the very young and the very old that are really going to be affected like this, or like that poor young lady last week who had an underlying condition. He also pointed out, though, that 20,000 people a year across Europe do die of the flu. So, you know, you're really confused. There's this media alert, but then for whatever reason, the medical profession aren't all that worried. At the same time, though, your child's going back to school in September. Do you really take the chance? Do you use kids as guinea pigs, or do you just shut it down?
Or do you?
What do you shut it down for?
Well,
we have absolutely no idea. Like in your standard school with like 400 or 500 children, if 1 or 2 get swine flu like this month, and you close the whole shoot down and you open it again in October, and then another 3 or 4 get it, you close it again down until November. So you could end up losing the whole year of education.
I've got to bring this to a conclusion, but another difficulty parents are going to have is the whole immunisation programme in relation to swine flu. Do you get your children inoculated? Would you? Given the fact that, OK, it has to go through the various bodies in order to be tested, and that they are sufficiently happy that this...
I'd take the best advice.
But as a parent, what would you do?
I'd take the best advice. I mean, measles and mumps kill you as well.
You know, you go to my doctor and say, what do you think here? And that is the advice I go for. I mean, you're not going to take your advice from, like, a red top newspaper, that's for sure. OK.
Call us 1530 99 99 33. Text us MD followed by your message to 53131. Don't go away, we're right back. Hi there, welcome back. 1530 99 99 33. That's the number if you want to give us a call. Text us MD, followed by your message to 53131. A couple of texts coming in. I'd like to ask the panel if they believe that kids should go back to school with the risk of contracting swine flu. I'm personally not sending my children to school until it is safe to do so. Marion Loud. Marion Loud, I don't think anyone is eminently qualified to answer that question. You do what you feel is right for your children, but I'd also try and have a conversation with your general practitioner. They might be able to throw a little bit of light on it, and why not have a chat with the school as well. I'm 9 weeks pregnant, I'm working at a Montessori school, and I'm back in September. I suffer severe bronchitis in winter months, and I'm desperately worried about returning to work. Each year kids are awfully sick with colds, coughs, sneezing. What do I do? Would swine flu be so feared if it was called sniffles? Don't know about that. OK, let's move it on. I want to start with you, Adrian. You have two children, more or less the same age as mine. As a parent, you always worry about your children in relation to who they're hanging around with, what they are doing, and what are they getting up to in a clandestine manner. And let's face it, kids will be kids. Would you be of the view that it's important to keep an eye on them in relation to checking their emails, their Facebook perhaps, their Twitter pages, or whatever else? Now, they're not at that age yet where they're doing that, but would you do it?
I think you've almost answered it, Alan, already in saying that kids be kids. We've got to do that. I think all social media, Facebook, Twitter, they're all about relationships, and relationships are about two-way dialogues, not someone gate crashing it from the side. I know there was an interesting article at the weekend where the journalist has admitted openly that she is on Twitter and follows the tweets of her kids. High-risk strategy, and not one on which to build a good relationship.
Sometimes as a parent you're probably best off not knowing about these things.
Well, there's an element of best off not knowing, but there's also an element, I think, of having a trusting relationship and letting kids be kids, letting teenagers or young adults get on with their lives. And I think it's a bit like when we would have been children in the 80s. If we'd turned around and seen our parents in the nightclub, it would have been a slightly awkward moment for everybody.
Mairead, you have a number of grown-up children now. Did you ever have the inclination to try and pry into their private lives just for an information-gathering purpose?
Inclination, it's an ongoing saga.
Even now that they're grown up?
Well, the wonderful thing, I have two kids that they're twins. They just turned 22. They're now in relationships and stuff like that. So it's all very interesting at this stage. And I have a 15-year-old. And I certainly now, come to Facebook thing, both my older kids are on Facebook, and their aunties and their aunties' cousins and people like that. My generation want to become their friends on Facebook, and it's, oh my God, ma'am, she wants to be my friend. So it's not really cool from that perspective. But when it comes to mobile phones and internets, I am definitely of the old-fashioned school. The kids under 16 are my responsibility. I'm a bit around in the world a bit longer, and I have absolutely no compunction but to take up that mobile phone.
Dictatorial, that
take up that mobile phone and have a good check of it and go through the email, no problem.
What about boundaries? What about privacy for children? Because children need, to an extent, to have their own private world that's going on away from mum and dad. I'm not saying that they're involved in drugs, whatever. They just need their own space.
They need their own space, but they don't need utterly private space like that where they can be exposed to absolutely anything. And I have no problem whatsoever picking up my son's mobile phone.
Children of their 15, 16 and 17, they're very smart individuals. They know what's right, they know what's wrong. They won't be led down a path. They have to go.
They may be led down a path,
and
no, I think it's parents have a responsibility towards their kids. 10-year-olds have mobile phones, and you think that a 10-year-old should hold on to their mobile phone and their parents shouldn't have a check on it to see that everything is okay and that the kind of email or text messages they're getting or sending aren't troublesome? I mean, I absolutely think that parents have that duty. It's not just even a right, it's a duty.
But we live in a different world now. We live in an age of technology,
and you checked out
instant communication, and that's just life.
But in the days before we had Facebook or Twitter or anything like that, our parents checked out who our friends were. They knew. My mother used to always say, show me your company and I'll tell you who you are.